Hello and welcome to the Preparing for a Remote Medical Device Audit Knowledge Transfer presentation. This presentation is made possible by the NSAI Medical Devices Department. My name is Glenn Emmelock. I'm the U.S. Medical Operations Manager, and I'm pleased to be making this presentation to you today. Topics that will be addressed in this presentation include: when may a remote audit be allowed? How does the remote audit risk assessment process work? How will NSAI communicate the risk assessment results and when? What documents will the auditor be reviewing during a remote audit? What remote audit tools will be used? And when is the remote audit followed by an on-site audit? Especially relevant now during the COVID-19 pandemic, many of our clients want to know if it's possible to have a remote audit instead of the on-site audit. Remote audits may be allowed for most surveillance audits, portions of recertification audits, transfers from other notified bodies or when other notified bodies cease operations, and if your audit includes the review of a device that is COVID-19 related, and it is a Med Device Directive or in vitro diagnostic directive related audit. So if that covers when a remote audit is allowed, when is a remote audit generally not allowed? Remote audits are generally not allowed for initial stage 2 audits unless the audit is for a company that is producing a COVID-19 related device for Europe, scope expansions, adding new sites, new processes, and new devices, except when, again, the devices are COVID-19 required for Europe, and unannounced audits. So how will NSAI decide if a remote audit is possible for the next audit? The answer is that will be decided based on the results of a risk assessment process by NSAI. So then, what are the general steps to this risk assessment? First, the NSAI CSR provides questions to the client that are based on the risk assessment. The client reviews and answers the questions in a timely manner. The client answers are then reviewed by the relevant operations or scheme manager who makes the risk assessment determination. So during the risk assessment determination, the operations scheme manager reviews the client answers, the prior relevant audit history, and relevant issues for the next audit. Among the information that's reviewed includes the client answers. One of the client answers that is very important is, will the QMS function completely during the upcoming audit? With many of our clients having some impact from the COVID-19 pandemic, it's entirely possible that parts of the QMS may not function completely, such as production, during the upcoming audit. If production is functioning completely, one of the questions that is put to the client is, will the client operate a smartphone camera allowing live audio video in the areas of the audit, such as production? So that's a very important answer for the risk assessment. Also included in the risk assessment is the relevant audit history. For example, on previous audits, were there any major nonconformances, the completion or effectiveness verification of the corrective action requiring observation, such as that in a clean room or aseptic technique? Lastly, during the risk assessment, the ops or scheme manager reviews relevant issues for the next audit. For example, is there a substantial change application that has been submitted by the client for adding a new site, a new process, or production of a new device? And keep in mind, the answer may also have an impact if the device that is being produced is required for COVID-19 in Europe. The operations or scheme manager reviews the results of the Remote Audit Risk Assessment and decides on the audit approach. There are 5 potential approaches. The first is a full remote audit. The next is a full remote audit with later on-site verification. Or there can be a partial remote plus later on-site follow-up. There can be a rescheduling of the on-site audit to another time later in the year. And in certain cases, for example, when the client is unable to have either a remote audit or an on-site audit and the certificate is going to expire, NSAI may be required to begin suspension of certification process. Once the risk assessment determination has been completed, it is reviewed with the lead auditor. The lead auditor shares the assessment with the client. If the client has issues with the determination, the ops or scheme manager is available to review the risk assessment with the client and determine if changes to the determination can be made. The client accepts the results of the risk assessment and the determination. The CSR and/or lead auditor forwards the remote audit guidance, which includes helpful information both in the preparation for as well as the conduct of the remote audit. And the lead auditor forwards the audit plan, which includes any and all documents that are required in advance of the audit. Next, let's discuss the documents the auditor will be reviewing during the remote audit. In general, these are the same documents as that during an on-site audit. However, the difference is during a remote audit, some documents will be requested in advance. These will be discussed in the audit plan. What are some examples of documents requested in advance? The quality manual and an index of QMS documents. In addition, if part of the remote audit covers a new site, a new process, production of a new device, it is likely that the auditor is going to request SOPs related to what has changed or what is new for that particular remote. The balance of the documents are those that are generally requested during an on-site. These include complaint records, CAPA records, internal audit records, etc., etc. Next, let's discuss what tools should be used on the remote audit. In general, the client is responsible for hosting software conference tools. Conference tools that are used most often include Skype for Business, Microsoft Teams, and Cisco WebEx. NSAI auditors are also familiar with using Zoom. However, the Zoom application that will be used is the web-based one. The desktop application is known to have security issues. If your remote audit includes a review of production areas, it's recommended that you have FaceTime on a smartphone or tablet or some application that works similar so that the auditor can see and hear operations that are going on. Finally, it is recommended that there be a shared cloud drive, such as that of Google Drive or Dropbox, which is best for instant secure sharing of large documents and files versus making them available through the software conference tool. Finally, when is the remote audit followed by an on-site audit? In general, the remote audit needs to be followed by an on-site audit to verify results from the remote audit in cases including recertification, if there is a scope expansion request, new sites, new processes, new devices, and during remote audits when not all the required processes, for example, production, were able to be audited completely. This may be the case, especially during the COVID pandemic, and production might have been suspended at the time of the remote. This concludes the presentation on preparing for a remote medical device audit. We'd like to thank you for attending. If you have queries or concerns, please feel free to contact your CSR if you're an existing NSAI client. On this slide, we list the email addresses of the European Operations Manager, Elaine Darcy, and the US Operations Manager, Glenn Emelock. If you are not yet an NSAI client and you would like more information on our remote audit services, we also list the email of Colm O'Rourke, the Medical Device Industry Engagement Officer, who will be happy to chat with you. We wish you, your colleagues, and families well at this stressful time and look forward to working with you in the near future and as the pandemic subsides.